My full name is Robert David Askins, and the company I worked for when I was president of the AGC was Graham Construction and Management. So in the chairs, I was really hoping we'd have it over in the boardroom so I could look at the pictures, but no, Ken Murphy was right ahead of me, and then Carl Stewart was following me, and Mike Riley was after him, and as I recall, Mark Poe was just ahead of Ken. So I was in between those four. Oh, issues, challenges, crises, the whole time I was on the board, going through the chairs and serving as president, we never had a crisis, and it was certainly a different atmosphere than anything that I'd had described to me the way it was a few years earlier than that. I attribute a lot of that to Wayne and also to the staff, and then just the people on the board were pretty congenial. The issues we had they're probably still the same ones. Workforce development, the apprenticeship program. We had the situation with Gary Height and how to recognize him. And one of the things I learned shortly after I became president was how old Wayne was. And he's older than I thought, and so the issue of succession got to be there a little bit. Happily, that went more to Carl than me, and then happily Wayne and Cheryl had it already figured out anyway. So those are some of the issues, the budgets, the transportation budgets, the lobbying, all that kind of stuff. I suspect is probably still relevant as it was a few years ago. Well, I think the things that I remember the most, and it was things that I'd never done in the course of my career, my typical day-to-day project management, estimating, bidding career type thing, was the advocacy and the lobbying, the trips to Olympia, back to DC a couple of times. I found that really interesting, just how the mechanics of the politics work and all the things that go on in that. So the economy at the time when I was president, 2012, it was pretty good, really. As I recall, there was, the business here of general contracting in Spokane is always competitive. And, for it to get to be to the point where you can, make money routinely is pretty rare. But in those days, the big hit from 2008 had passed to some degree. Contracts coming out again, and it wasn't great times, but it was good enough. Oh, as I said before, the staff at the AGC was, Wayne, Cheryl, Mary, the rest of them, just really had it together. And it was smooth, the meetings were smooth, well planned out, the notes, the record keeping, very good. One thing I noticed though, and I think I commented on this at my talk at the convention, was how social they are. You come over, you're going to approve the checks and the billings for the month, and party house, total wine, okay, but that's what they do. It's a social organization, and there's of course more to it than that, but it was smooth. Wayne did a good job. Cheryl did a good job. Still does a good job. I got into construction. The family wasn't into it. We didn't have a construction company to join, but I grew up in Pullman just south of town, and from where I lived, you could look into town and see the campus. And there's always construction on campus, and it seemed to draw me in because in the summertime I could ride my bicycle into town. This is when I was 12, 13, 14, and go to a construction site, and I would sneak onto them. This would be after hours, and go wandering through the buildings and look at things and wonder what does that thing do, or how did they build that, which I found myself doing years later. It never changed. And I remember one time CUNY was building the Stevenson North and South dormitories, those brick ones right at the south entrance of the campus. And I snuck in there one afternoon, one late summer afternoon. I was spotted by, I'm sure it was Frank Reno, if you remember Frank Reno, one of CUNY's superintendents. Yeah. And he chased me out of there yelling and screaming at me the whole way. And it was only a few years later that Frank and I worked on the county jail down here together. And when we first met, he looked at me and I looked at him. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
So yeah. No, and I was born in Pullman. I grew up there. I took a degree in construction management from Washington State University, and then did a lot of work for them. So I got a BS in CM and went to work in construction. Oh, there's been a lot of them all over the Inland Northwest. I think the most meaningful ones to me, though, were the ones I did for Washington State University. And there's several down at Pullman, and then the big projects down here at their Spokane campus, which was the original health sciences building, the academic center, the nursing building, and then the biomed building, which is where the College of Medicine is now. Those are really pretty buildings. The contracting method that WSU used was GCCM, which was a great way to contract work. And I think of all of them, the academic center is my favorite. It's a real classic design and just a beautiful building. Probably one of the biggest one was the evolution of contracting methods. When I started, it was all hard bid, maybe a little bit of private negotiated work, but the public work was all hard bid. And then over time, GCCM came in, and then towards the end of my time, design build started creeping in. WSU started using design build, and those were different methods that shifted risk in ways that weren't always apparent, and you had to learn how to do it. So the contracting methods, the evolution of them, getting away from the hard bid, anything you did to get away from the hard bid was a good thing in my opinion. Then I always throw in PDFs and telescoping boom forklifts as big advances. We belong to the AGC, that was Graham Construction and Management. We were an open shop contractor, and there were contract apprenticeship requirements, and the only way we could meet those requirements was to have access to an apprenticeship program, and that's what the AGC provided us. That was probably the main driving force to be a member for us. There's a lot of other things involved, of course, but that was the one. Being open shop, we didn't engage in, I never got involved with union negotiations. Being from an open shop company, it just didn't seem appropriate. So others, Tom, Carl, did a lot of that, but I did not. So it was the apprenticeship, and a lot of my focus when I was president was on trying to develop the apprenticeship program as much as we could. We are the AGC.